To stop the spread of misinformation, and there's an abundance out there, as you know, you need to know how to spot it first. We pick up information in so many places now, on TV, the internet, social media, but it's become hard to separate fact from fiction. As we wrap up our special News Literacy Week, we want to help you recognize false information when you see it. My guest tonight is Michael Spikes, PhD candidate in the Learning Sciences at Northwestern University School of Education and Social Policy, also an adjunct professor at Columbia College in Chicago. Thank you for being here, Michael.
Thank you for having me.
Sure thing. First up, for more than 15 years, you've been teaching and developing curriculum on the subject of news media literacy for young people. There's so much misinformation out there. Media literacy is needed now more than ever. How do you approach it?
Well, one of the things that I really try to think about when teaching others about media literacy is taking it way beyond just the practices of checking facts or just knowing what's true and what's not. It's really about acquiring a number of skills that you can then enact in real time when coming upon any piece of information, whether that be online, whether that be through your television, through anywhere. Because just like you've been talking about, information comes at us from so many different places, from so many different sources, that it becomes evident that we need to become more active consumers of media and information.
Yeah, specific skills are so important. Today's news world, as you mentioned, can often be just a muddied mess. You know, what is news, propaganda, conspiracy, made-up stuff? Young people are especially vulnerable too and have grown up in a confusing world when it comes to where do you get credible information. I mean, I don't recall fake news was a thing just 15 years ago when you started this and developed the curriculum. So how has your work evolved over the years?
Well, some of the main things have just been with the ecosystem of media now that we sort of encounter on an everyday basis. So just like you talked about for young people, we talk about young people as being, quote, digital natives lots of times because we think they've grown up in this world of just ubiquitous information. They know how to use TikTok. They know how to use these social media platforms. But research has shown that they have a lot of trouble with discerning reliability in that information. Because lots of times, lots of that information sits in a platform that is used for entertainment lots of times. And sometimes those young people could turn their brains off, sort of essentially, when coming upon all kinds of information and not realizing how that information may be, driving their actions, driving their beliefs, and so on.
Mm-hmm. Like it or not, information on social media is here to stay, all kinds of it. So you say news literacy is not just a means for fact checking, it's a practice that encourages students to become more active consumers of media and information of all kinds. And you mentioned skills. Can you give us an example?
Well, some of those skills would just be engaging in a practice of inquiry when coming upon information. So, that includes asking really smart questions, or even just saying to oneself, when coming upon something that seems too good to be true, to sort of ask oneself to say, how do I know what I know here? How does this person that's bringing me this information find out, or what evidence are they bringing to me to show me that they know what they know? So it's really sort of engaging in that set of practices, really, again, thinking about it as an active consumption of information. And lastly, I would mention, for young people in particular, they're not just consumers of information, they're also producers of information. So it becomes just as important for them to enact those same kind of skills in that practice of actually producing information.
Yeah, they say that our generation created newspapers. Their generation is going to have to create, credible sources that they learn, to rely on, a new entity, all for it, if it has the reputations and the credibility and the integrity that we see in the top journalism in this world. But I know that in the state of Illinois, media literacy will now be required for high school students. Other states include it within the standards for learning, but they don't have the mandate. Talk to us about that. Do you think it should be required learning for students across the country?
Well, definitely. I would definitely say that media literacy should be made a requirement for all students to learn. But it should also, in sort of going back to what I started talking about at the very beginning of our conversation, which was making this a regular practice, a term that I've started to use more when referring to the skills and practices that are part of media literacy, is an epistemology. And what that means is, how do we acquire knowledge? How do we get knowledge? How do we know things? And that can be incorporated into what I would call all subjects within schools, so that teachers and educators, administrators don't have to look at media literacy as something that's an extra thing that they have to take on, but that it is something that is already incorporated into their existing practices, into their existing curricula. So this becomes a regular thing to ask those questions that we've talked about. How do I know this? How does this person know that? What evidence has been shown to me? And how good is that evidence?
Right. It's time to be discerning. They have much to learn, and people like you to help them in this quest. Thank you so much for what you're doing, and thank you so much for your time here tonight, Michael Spikes. We wish you the best.
Thank you.
We've had so many guests like Michael on this week with all kinds of information and tips for you, so we encourage you to visit newslit.org for more information and ways to help combat misinformation. It's time for us all to learn how to be more responsible in acquiring that. A number of major U.S. cities are set to